We're live. Okay.
Thank you. All right, folks, I think we figured out the glitch. You can hear us, Mr. Burnham?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful. We can hear you crisply. So thank you for that patience again. All right, Liddy, we wanted to hear from Mr. Farnham. There was, based on conversations leading up to Grape Week, council has offered a revised draft. That is the no, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong draft, apologies. We have H 397 as introduced in front of us right now. And we've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Farnham, so I just asked him to come in and offer feedback on provisions within the bill. So, table is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the record, Douglas Farnham, Chief Recovery Officer for the state of Vermont. I'll start with Section 1, the Emergency Management Division duties and budget. And one note I have there is that this modification to Title 20, Section 3A is actually redundant with Title 20, Section 41. The State Emergency Management Plan is created in Section 41 for this exact same purpose. Now, the reference in current statute is much higher level. So, but it does, the Emergency Management Plan is the all hazard preparedness response and recovery framework. And again, that section could maybe be built on to, right now it charges the division with coordinating among state, local, private, volunteer entities. And that could maybe be spelled out a little bit more explicitly about who they will collaborate with. It also says shall create and republish as needed, but not less than every 5 years. And that timeline could be, reconsidered to be more specific. But I do think that this Section 1 is primarily duplicative of that, and the elements that are built in number 4 here, I think those are rather detail level elements that the S310 of last year established a report out from the director of Vermont Emergency Management. Now that after action review is being conducted through June 30th, and then the report out is on December 15th of this year. And I think some of these elements would be part and parcel of that same after action review process that is still being conducted. And so I think if the legislature wanted to build on what was done in S310 of last year and build on the current statutory structure of the State Emergency Management Plan, then a task force or other working group could be created to work with the director of emergency management and also the emergency management director at the Agency of Human Services, who works on the individual side of recovery and response, in order to make all of those updates and tweaks to the State Emergency Management Plan. But I do think that's the most appropriate vehicle for the content that is being sought after in Section 1.
Okay.
Section 2. This one piece of context I'd like to offer the committee is that we currently, the state of Vermont being the we here, currently bond for approximately $50 million a year for our capital construction needs. So the entire capital bill that a lot of attention gets put onto is about $50 million that we borrow for every year. And I'm refining my review of municipal debt related to disasters over the last 2 years. But there has been an estimate of over $300 million of municipal damage over the last 2 years. And we are somewhere in the realm of 65 million or so reimbursed by FEMA. Now, some of that 300 million, and one reason I have to do the analysis is some of that's for work that hasn't been completed yet. It's damage. It's not money that's been spent by municipalities. So we are doing a cash flow analysis to see how much debt municipalities are carrying right now, but it is extremely significant. And for context, I would say that the debt that municipalities are carrying right now is roughly on the same order of magnitude or exceeding the entire capital bill for the state of Vermont. So this section to establish the ability to lend to municipalities in the expectation of interest-free loans, et cetera, would have an extremely high price tag attached to it in the event of a statewide major disaster declaration. I do also think that the financial assistance, the Vermont Emergency Management makes sense to administer and pass through FEMA grants to the towns, but it isn't necessarily the most logical choice for financial assistance. And I think the expertise in that realm lies more with the Treasurer's Office and with the Vermont Bond Bank. So those are the major elements of Section 2 that I wanted to point out.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Barnum on this? Representative Waters Evans.
Thank you. So you're saying that there's in the previous section you were discussing, there was a redundancy. Then you're saying that there's going to be a high price on this and all these other things. So do you have like recommended actions, or are you saying you just think it's better to eliminate these things from the bill altogether? Are you making a recommendation at this point, or are you just pointing stuff out?
So my recommendation for the first section would be that it could be approached two ways. If the committee strongly feels that additional detail is needed below the state in the section for the state emergency management plan, then I would recommend pulling up that section and considering edits or additions, clarifications in that section. But I do think because Vermont Emergency Management is doing an after-action review and will be reporting back in December, the formation of a task force to work with the emergency management director could be beneficial to inform more specific recommendations next year. So I do think that this section could be pulled or replaced with a task force, but if it were at least aligned with the existing statutory structure, then it would reduce the risk of confusion. And because it is right now, I think a near complete overlap with what the state emergency management plan does. For Section 2, I don't think I would recommend removal because of the large price tag and the fact that in order to do something like this, it would be at least in the double digits of millions of dollars, and that's not contemplated in the budget. And it would have to, I would think, accompany something from House Appropriations to identify the funds for it. There's a lot of overlap here with the work that the Treasurer's Office is doing on the resilience implementation strategy. And I think that work is underway, a partnership with the Agency of Natural Resources and the Treasurer's Office. So yes, I guess those are my recommendations for the first two sections.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. All right, that moves us on to Section 3.
Section 3, That is currently structured as an additional section, so it'd be 20 VSA 51. And from a statutory perspective, the Community Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Grant Program is section 48 of Title 20. And this buyout program currently exists at Vermont Emergency Management underneath the Community Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Program. And more specifically, if you go into section 48, and the types of grant awards VM is authorized to give, projects that implement disaster mitigation measures, adaptation or repair, including watershed restoration, similar activities that directly reduce risks to communities, lives, public collections of historic value and property. And so that's a higher level kind of catch-all language. I do think the danger whenever so a buyout program is authorized in law and is currently funded with one-time general funds. And I think that this more specific buyout program wouldn't necessarily change anything other than pulling in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So I do think this section is redundant. Now, one thing that could be done instead of adding a section 51 is there could be a clarification added to section 48 of Title 20 to explicitly say buyouts of personal property. Now, reading the current statutory language, I am very confident that buyouts are incorporated in that broader language. But if it was just an additive clarification that didn't constrict the program or constrain it, then I don't think there'd be any harm in clarifying that buyouts are part of that program. The current version of the Community Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Program, it's established within the Department of Public Safety, and their primary coordination is right now written as with Department of Environmental Conservation. I think that just represents a different perspective of having them coordinate with DEC instead of ACCD. But I would say if we force the department to coordinate with too many agencies in the design of the program, it can get bogged down. So I think when that program was created last year, DEC, Environmental Conservation, was identified as the primary partner in a buyout situation. ACCD is much more involved in how you compensate for and how you react after a buyout, right? How you replace that housing, how you replace that grand list value, not necessarily whether or not a buyout should go forward in the first place.
Any questions there? Thank you.
So section 4, Mr. Chair, due to the high level of uncertainty at the federal level, we are doing our best to work within our existing means, and we do anticipate identifying areas where we will need to address issues that come up over the course of the next year. So one thing I would say with this section is I don't think the administration can support the creation of additional positions. And I think it's likely that it'll be very challenging over the next year to maintain current operations and current levels of service. And that will probably take a significant investment of resources by itself. So I don't think the administration can support this section, but it is clear, it is not redundant, and I don't have any other alternative suggestions to what's being drafted here.
Okay, understood. Anything for that section from the table, Rep. Hooper?
Maybe. How many is too many agencies in terms of bogging down coordination?
Um, on the, I can see, my colleague Director Foran is in the room, so, I might be speaking for him a bit too much here. I don't think adding ACCD to the existing structure of who VEM collaborates with in the creation of the program would be a deal breaker. I do think creating a separate section for flood buyouts outside of the community disaster or community resilience and disaster mitigation grant program, that would be confusing just from a statutory construction point of view. So I mean, we do coordinate between the agencies. I do think ACCD has less of a role in a buyout situation. And when you look at it, the primary considerations, there's the reality of the decisions towns make, but the priority considerations for a buyout should be, will this have floodplain mitigation benefit? And is there a risk to life and safety at this property? And so that's DEC and public safety. If you start to get into the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, their policy areas are like thoughtful community design, grand lists, growth. And I think there's a bit of a contradiction there. So you could bring them in knowing, hey, they're going to represent a different point of view and they're going to ask for certain things to be incorporated in the program design. But I do think the opinions of emergency management and environmental conservation should matter more in a buyout scenario than the opinions of an agency dedicated to developing the community and growing the economy, et cetera. I think life safety is the highest priority for me.
Understood.
Any other questions for Mr. Fargo before we move on to section 5? All right, let's do it.
All right, so section 5, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that much of this section is already addressed through the VT alert session. So I would recommend here, I'll defer to Director Foran, that I do think much of this is already established and it might be more a matter of municipal adoption of that system or education on what the system can do. And I think there's a great deal of value in a statewide system as opposed to each community customizing their own, to their own wants and desires. You can't have a fully customized system at a state level, right? It won't be as fine-tuned as communities are going to want it. But I think if you're talking about standardized information and ability to respond in a statewide disaster, VT alerts is extremely important. So I would recommend that I think that this section could be adapted to recognize that VT alerts exists, that VEM is moving forward with it. I will be honest, Mr. Chair, I do not know if VT alerts is referenced in statute at this point.
Okay.
So that might be an opportunity, and maybe to strengthen the ability of municipalities to buy into the system. But again, Director Foran would definitely have much more information on that than I would.
Wonderful. Yes, we'll definitely chat with him once we wrap this up with you, sir.
And then on section 6, I don't have any significant comments here. I think section 6 is reasonable, and how much, if there are things that are removed from the rest of the bill, then I think if a task force or a working group is created, the needs assessment might seem redundant, but it would still be part of that task force effort. So I don't have any changes to recommend at this time with section 6.
Okay, thank you. And then 7 is also kind of falls into this more of this A&R conversation, but yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And just the committee on those 2 sections is I've been like having conversations with people in and around that. These A&R pieces are very, very deeply engaged in something that's more subject matter outside of our committee's purview. So right now, knowing that, we're back to the clock conversation, I personally think that this is something that is a conversation worthy to be had, but worthy to be had later, just as we're looking at these pieces out of the securities right now. Yeah, so that's just my perspective. Noodle on that. We'll discuss more later.
That's on 7, 8, 9.
7, that was the 6, that was a 6 and 7 conversation.
Yeah. Apologies. When I,
Right.
But yeah, no, sorry. I got over my skis there. Retract previous statement
Which one?
on the 6.
Okay.
So just 7.
I had a margin note that was old, working off very, very marked up copy here. And I've had my afternoon coffee. All right, please continue, Mr. Barr.
and I apologize, when I was speaking to section 6, I was speaking to the needs assessment. I was going off of the newer draft, so I may created some confusion there. In the version I was looking at, the only section left is the appropriations, which are not part of the current budget construct.
Understood. So that section of the needs assessment, the copy that we have in front of us would be 11. That is what he's referring to.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the.
Yeah, I think I have the wrong copy also.
And so the Division of Emergency Management, state stakeholders needs assessment report is the part that we're putting this on now, correct?
I think that, Mr. Chair, that could be retained as it is, or it could be expanded to address that task force concept where we have membership, not just from the state, but from the regional planning commissions, long-term recovery groups, the League of Cities and Towns, Vermont Community Foundation potentially, in order to allow that group to also consider what the Director of Emergency Management learns from the after action review process.
Okay. There has been some conversations with stakeholders there. We've been working on some edits. And so we wanted to have more of a full conversation with the original language so that everybody in the community had a good understanding of where we started, how we're evolving. Just because this bill is a big lift, we have not had possession of this bill for very long, for any significant period of time. So that's sort of the overarching purpose behind this exercise, to go through more granularly and get a better understanding. And we did have some emails about suggestions going around. So if that confused some folks, I apologize for crossing the streams. So that part's understood, Mr. Farnham. And does the committee have any questions for him right now? I would like to bring Eric up to discuss a little bit. No. All right, thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will stay on Zoom while Director Foran testifies, if that's okay.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
I am also working off the draft with 11 sections on it. But...
I think that's a perfect thing to do.
And I did submit written testimony. Maybe this morning, it's all looped together, but so I won't read verbatim everything that I have, but then you can go back and take a look if there's any specific questions. So for the record, Eric Foran, I'm the Director of Vermont Emergency Management. Thanks for letting me take the opportunity to testify today. So starting with section 1. Scroll those outlines. So section 1, parentheses 3. So it's basically talking about having a framework for flood response. So what we do at DEM is we don't necessarily look at one individual event response plans. We look at all hazards. You basically respond to the same thing in the same capacity, just with some nuanced differences. So we currently have a state emergency management plan. We've had one since 2014 called the SEMP, State Emergency Management Plan. It also has a response plan underneath it and a recovery plan underneath it. And then underneath those are every partner in the SCOC has an annex. So it defines what each partner does in the Emergency Operations Center. The recovery plan talks about the recovery task forces, which come out right after an event, talks about the recovery, long-term recovery groups, and starts to define the recovery response, which goes beyond VEM necessarily for the bigger responses into Doug and the Chief Recovery Officer. So we have that framework. It's done every 5 years. So we actually postponed last year because of the double flood, and we submitted it in this December. So it's on the governor's desk. So it has been updated and reflected after actions. So for every event that we have, we do an after action. So every flooding event, anytime the Emergency Operations Center opens, plus any exercise we have. And we have several exercises every year to basically ensure our plans work correctly. So we incorporated 7 after action reviews into this 5-year update. I don't want to make it sound like we only do it once every 5 years. In the past, that was kind of the way we did it since I came in 2 years ago. The idea is we get it at 5 years. That's when the governor signs off on it, but it's a living document. So each year, so this December 25, we'll look at it again and see if there's anything from an AAR in the last 12 months that we need to incorporate into that plan to make sure that we're responding as efficiently as possible. So it's not that it's only every 5 years we look at it, because it's honestly outdated on day one because new things come up. For example, wildfires are a new topic on our horizon, so we're working those in there. We re-looked at our threats and hazards to make sure that we're aligned with what it is now. If you looked back 5 years ago, pandemics weren't on there. So obviously we added things like that. So it's a living, breathing document that always gets updated. We're constantly exercising it to make sure that it's accurate and reflective of our actual response. And then we make updates to it. So my recommendation is that this section be removed because it's redundant. They did put it in Act 149 last year to say that the state shall have the state emergency management plan. It's already in statute. It's in Title 20, Chapter 1, Emergency Management, the State Emergency Management Plan, Section 41. So it is in there already. What I have worries about sometimes is specificity. If you put everything in there, that means you're always going to miss something. If you put in all hazards, then we are consistently always looking at all hazards to make sure everything's incorporated, make sure, yes, a flood response is different from a wildfire response, but the coordinating effort that we have and we established is the same framework. We just make sure we have the resources necessary for each. So if we put in specific things that the state emergency management plan shall have this, well, there's about 700 other things that all of a sudden aren't in there. And then you're worried about, well, does that mean you don't need them because it's not defined? And then, so the umbrella that they put in last year in 149 made a lot of sense. We were already doing it. We already have the structure. We already have the framework. We already have the AARs. It's a consistent thing we've done forever. The state emergency management plan for 2018 is out on the website. You can go take a look at it, the response plan and recovery plan. We will be posting a new one as soon as the governor promulgates it. And then we are working on the state partner annexes to update those as well. But again, they're all living, breathing documents. So the recommendation is this section isn't necessary. I'm going down to section 14A, emergency parking plans. So again, there's specific things that are outlined in the SEMP, and one of them in 20 VSA, actually number 6, is talking about local emergency management organizations. So each town has a local emergency management director by statute. I'm going to be honest, some are good, some are bad, some have experience, some don't. Some are the fire chief, police chief, dog catcher, mailman, all of the above, so they don't have the capacity, and that's something that always comes up in this room because we lean on them a lot. You know, we try to have local events solved locally, then it goes to the states, then it goes to the federal through us. And there's some talk about county level in there, but I'm gonna leave that for a different day. So the idea is we have these local emergency management organizations, and one of the things they are dictated to do by mandate is the local emergency management plan. So every year after election day, they have to go in and update their local emergency management plan. Every town has one. Well, I think we're at 97.8%. So we've got almost all of them. But we constantly push it. And last year when the Senate and House gave the 3 additional regional coordinators, they are going out and working through those plans now because we went from 3 to 6. So they had from 100 towns to 60 towns. So they have a capacity now to go in and individually meet with each town, go through that local emergency management plan, make sure that it's accurate. And things that come up in there are talks about emergency management plans. So this is something that we suggest removing because of its specificity, right? The town should have an emergency management response plan for an all hazards event. And part of that should be an emergency parking plan if necessary. So that's worked through the local.
Just got a hand here. Representative Trudeau.
Do we have a list of all the local emergency directors for each town?
Yes.
And is that public? Can I ask
The
for it?
emergency management, yeah, it's on our website.
All right, thank you.
We've asked them what they want to make public for communications channels, and some haven't, some don't, but we have communications with them and their 2 backups. It's in the local emergency management plans. So in that situation, that's a very specific thing to put into the local emergency management plan. It would be better to we can talk to the towns and say, hey, this might be something you should think about, as opposed to defining every single thing that's in there. For example, there's already vulnerable populations. There's already parts on shelters. There's already parts on where you could get resources from. So it's an outline that they're supposed to take off the shelf and kind of walk them through the exercise of a disaster. So we can talk to them about emergency plans. And then the next one is emergency shelter plans. So again, we propose this one gets removed because it's already a section in the LEMP that specifically defines every town. And to be clear, we don't have the authority to say they shall have a parking plan, they shall have a shelter. We have the ability to say, it's a good idea to do it, and this is why. And that's why we have those regional coordinators to be there in person to explain the necessity of it. But we already have a section on shelters. So what is your local shelter? How do you plan to staff it? How do you plan to get food to it? You know, where is it located? How can you get to it? Is it in a floodplain? Maybe you need a backup to your backup. All those things are already in our plan, and we already talked to them about it. So the section 1.4b emergency plans isn't really necessary to go into another thing. Section 1.4c talks about vulnerable populations and the ability to communicate with them. So the state has what's called a CARE program, C-A-R-E, community access response for emergencies, I believe it is. But basically, as a vulnerable person, if you were in a wheelchair, you used a medical device, you were on oxygen, you can call into this program and you get put on a list for your town. I'm so-and-so, I live here, this is my issue. And then it goes into the E911 board, and they hold that information. It's confidential, but if the EMD for a town is looking for their vulnerable population, they can call the Emergency Operations Center. We're 24/7, 365. We contact E911. They provide the list for the town. They send it over to us in an encrypted form. We send it to the town with a password. And so there is already a way for vulnerable populations for towns to understand what their vulnerable population is. Now, again, we don't have the authority to say, you shall go check on your vulnerable population. We can only give them the tools and the foresight to do it and recommend it. But if an EMD or the local fire chief doesn't think it's necessary, that's up to them. You know, we push it and explain how important it is, and we give them the ability to have those names. This is where we get into what I call a root cause analysis. So as a training and exercise administrator, when we ran exercises, you would come back and something would be wrong. Let's say someone didn't answer that phone in that room. And you'd have to say, well, what's the root cause of why that is? So one, is there a phone there? And if there's no phone, then it's a resource issue. You get them a phone. Okay, well, we solved that. And if, okay, there's a phone, but they don't know how to use it, then it's a training. If it's, they weren't in the room to answer it, then it's a procedure thing where they need to be manned that phone. So digging down for this one, the idea of being able to contact vulnerable populations, and you'll see it again later when we talk about the emergency notification system. We have those. So it may be that if you want to address it in a way, it's about education, right? The system's already out there, but the towns don't know how to use it, or they don't have the capacity to use it. Those are more the root cause issues than the actual structure itself of having a system. So that goes into 1.4D, which is the emergency notification system. And this was what Doug talked about. So we have the Vermont Alert System. It's a very robust system. You can sign up, anyone can sign up for, as a individual, you can go in and VT-Alert and get an account, and it has a long checklist. I want to know about traffic issues in my area. I want to know about weather events. You'll see that later in this. I want to know about, water main breaks. I want to know about wildfires. So it's a system we call passive because the people want the information. So we call them subscribers. So I get everyone that goes out in the state, and we probably send out, 50 a day for various things. And when we say go out, it's not us pushing it out, it's whatever that entity is. So say Barry can send out a snow ban issue. It has to be somewhat emergency service, public health, public safety related. You can't say there's a park barbecue, but the system is already there. So one side of it is, it's actually three-sided. One side is you as a citizen signing up to get that information. So you'll see later that they talk about having the ability to receive weather alerts. So you can sign up for this, and I get a weather alert. Yesterday was all a wind advisor. So it comes right to my phone. It could come to my email. It could come to my landline. But the second part of that is a town can be an administrator. So we have maybe 70 towns that have signed up to do it. So the town of Barry has decided they want to do it. They have an administrator. They have a water main break on South Street. They can send out an alert just to the subscribers of Barry. For example, you'll see we sent one to Heinsberg, had a water main break. We sent it to everyone that asked for public notifications in Heinsberg, went to about 11,000 people. It was all of them asking for data. So it's what we call subscribers. They subscribed to Heinsberg, and you'll notice that there's probably not 11,000 people in Heinsberg. What it is other people that work in Heinsberg or travel through Heinsberg, they also ask for it because they want to know what's going on there. So the system is there to already receive messages. The system is there for towns to push messaging. And then the third one is the state can go in and say, look, this is important, and I'm going to push it to you whether you want it or not. And so we have EAS systems, the emergency alert systems, and we have the WIA system, the wireless emergency information system. So we can push out, you'll see across the bottom of your television when it beeps there, that's us pushing that out. Part of that is from the federal government, but we have the capacity to do it. But also a wireless emergency alert means that we can put a circle around an area and we can ring every cell phone that's in that area off that tower, whether you ask for it or not, because it's something that's dangerous to life and limb, and we want to make sure that everyone has it. So we call that more of a push, where you didn't ask for it, but we're going to give it to you because your life's in danger. You'll see that for snow squalls a lot. The Weather Service can do it as well. But that all runs through us, and it all runs through VT Alert. So again, looking at the root cause here, the system is out there, but we only have, I think, 80,000 subscribers for Vermont. So like last year, we were hoping for some assistance in marketing of it. We push it we push it at local fairs and craft shows and stuff, but not every citizen knows about it. We're also trying to get the towns all on board, but they have capacity issues where we get them trained up, and then, they don't do it for a while, then they get nervous. We do have the ability to do that in-house. We have a 24/7 watch officer. So for example, the one that went out for Heinsberg came out from us, not from Heinsberg, but we got the messaging from Heinsberg. So really it's more about the education for towns to know that they can do it, and citizens that know that they can do it. We'd love to have 252 towns and 650,000 folks on it. But regardless, even if they don't subscribe, we can push it to them. So again, the root cause there is that the system is in place. People just don't know about it. Let's see, I just scrolled up. Stop for a second. Any questions?
Representative Hooper.
This might be a lot of data to ask for, but do you have a preparedness index of any kind, ranking towns from prepared to not so? No.
No, and we lay the same assumption on all EMDs that your responsibility is this. So one thing we did do over the last couple of years is, and it comes to the next one, section 14E, training for staff, town staff. We recommend this be removed because we have the training. It's more of a capacity issue when you get to the root cause. So an EMD is appointed by the town select board. By default, they have to have one. They have a defined job responsibility, so they know what it is. But we've also provided multiple facets of training. So you can do an EMD 2-hour seminar to kind of get your feet wet, kind of understand what's going on. You can do an EMD course, which is an 8-hour day course. And then we provide an EM certification. So you're taking both of those plus another probably 60 hours worth of courses to give you a very large picture, holistic view of what we expect you to do as EMDs. And then we reach out to them, like our regional coordinators meet with them all the time, as we're in accordance with updating their LEMP, but also any trainings. You know, our idea is that we would love every town to exercise at least once a year. We would want them. The idea is that every town has their own emergency operations center. Again, it's a resource issue. So we push that when we have state level exercises at the emergency operations center. We ask if towns want to open theirs and have communications with us so they can test their abilities. You know,
How many regional coordinators?
6.
Is that enough?
I mean, it's better. We had 3.
What's ideal? 14?
Yeah. I mean, 1 per county would be nice.
Yeah.
But 6 is way better than 3. So they're down to like 60 towns each. So, it's just going to be directly correlated to the amount of time that we get to spend in each town. And that's the issue that consistently comes up here when you look at root cause is the towns don't have capacity, right? I can teach them Vermont Alert. I can provide them a quarterly training class that they can go to remind them about a Vermont Alert, but then they don't touch it for 2 months. And then something happens and they're nervous about using it. So it's really about capacity at the local level. It's not about the functionality of them having training available, but can the EMD spend 80 hours getting the course? We have a significant amount to do. But we also have a significant amount that does. So we make it available to them, but I'm gonna say they're volunteers, right? They're appointed, but they don't get paid. There's no structure. We don't say you're the EMD and that's it. Usually it's multiple hats that they're wearing. So that's really.
And you can probably have directors for more than one town, right? Same person.
We've talked about that, like a floating director, or at this point, the statute says each town shall have a director. And then what we have is we set up 2 years ago, regional emergency management committees. So each county has basically a working group where all those EMDs get together, hash out what's going on, basically have an ability to say, well, if I'm in a bad spot and I need a dump truck, you have 3 dump trucks, or you have 4 excavators, or you have 5 fire trucks. Like it's a way for them in what we call blue sky days when it's not raining out to be looking to solve issues going forward. So when dark sky days come, they don't have to be like, who has a dump truck? Who has an excavator? So we work with them during these REMCs, which are run by a lot of acronyms, the regional planning commissions, the RPCs.
Yes.
Run those for us with our regional coordinators, our RCs attending. So it's a way for them in their area to kind of have that mutual aid type regional response, because a lot of towns don't have the capabilities to do it all themselves. And we've had discussions lately about, does it make sense for every town to have an emergency operations center, or maybe like 5 towns? Like I live in Bristol, which is surrounded by New Haven, Moncton. So does it make more sense for one emergency operations center to be able to cover those, and that you're pooling resources? It's kind of that, regionalization question that's going on everywhere. Fire department levels, regional police, regional. So we're looking into that. We're also looking into, again, at the capacity level, and this is off topic a little bit, but we're looking into, can we form what we call incident management assistance teams, IMAT teams, where Barton has never had an incident before and doesn't really know what to do. We have some people that are trained and we can send them Barton. They wouldn't take over Barton. It's a very similar concept to what the hazmat team does. And I'm a local firefighter. So when the hazmat team shows up, they don't take over my fire scene. They work with me. They're in the incident command post with me. So we don't want to push people out, but we want to go and give them assistance. So we've tried a couple different ways. What we've seen is liability issues, right? If we bring in retired people that aren't on state contracts, how does it? So lots of bumps in the road there, but we're still trying to work some options about how we can maybe, when we talk about USAR being a Swiss Army tool, they have some people that are highly skilled in planning, and maybe we could send them there. Or we also have, we have deemed in the new we call them State Emergency Operations Center liaisons. So we send these people, it's usually the regional coordinator, but when the operations center opens, we send someone to Plainfield and sat them there for a week to help them out. It's a two-way street. It helps Plainfield, but it also helps the State Emergency Operations Center get information about what's going on, because information flow is consistently a problem for us.
And how does that training crew, if you will, how do they get compensated? Do that?
That's one of the hiccups right now.
That's one of the things.
Yeah.
But it all plugs into the incident command.
Yeah.
Paradigm.
In that case, it would be the State Emergency Operations Center is the coordinating effort entity for the state. So they would be coordinated through the State Emergency Operations. Center. We'd say, Team B, we need you, and Brattleboro Team C, you're going to Randolph. They would coordinate through us, if they need to switch out people. So it's a work in progress that we haven't got to. Obviously, the liability and the compensation is one of those.
And do you have a timeline for the governor's promulgation of the?
Anytime now.
Anytime.
Yeah. So that was section 140. Sorry, went off track there, but I could talk emergency management all day. Question.
Yeah, if town capacity is an issue and we know that there are inequities with municipality, town, capacity to do things, do you have a solution for addressing that dynamic that's not the state?
I'm sorry, could you bring, I didn't hear the whole question.
I'm saying that there are inequities regarding town capacity, and if that's an issue, then what is the potential solution if it's not like state led? I didn't know if you had a different idea of a
And
solution.
I think that's the slippery slope that we've been working on for 2 years. How much does the state do? How much does the town do? Some towns have more capacity, some
Right.
less. So we brought on those 3 additional coordinators specifically to try to make it a little bit more equitable. So we understand that some towns we have to teach to fish. Some already know how to fish. They just need a little help. We do the same with exercises. All right, town B, you've exercised 3 times with our assistants. Now you're on your own, because I had to focus on town C, who's never run an exercise. So, we don't have enough capacity to do everything we want. So we have to triage a little bit and try to make sure that those that need a little bit more help, as opposed to those that have already gotten. And we'll be the same triage with exercises, like towns, and then, local, more regional groups, and then there's certain private equity or private entities that want to do it. I think regional airports. So we really have to triage what we're doing to make sure that we're helping people that need it most. And talking about people that need most of financial assistance. So this one, same kind of rationale that Doug had. There's other entities other than VEM that would work best in this capacity. Bond Bank, maybe the treasurer's office. You're also talking about AHS and AOT needing to be involved. So just having some clarity in there would help us out. But that's not, what we do is there's a disaster and it's a reimbursement from FEMA. So the town fixes something, then FEMA pays them back for it. Obviously, there's issues about funding gaps and the ability to do it and then get reimbursed. But that's how the process works fundamentally. So I know Doug and his team is working on seeing what we can fill for gaps there, but that's not really in VEM's wheelhouse.
So I'm just being like, we're on the clock right now. We do have OPR that we're doing at 4 o'clock. And so
speed up. I got it.
No. It was
You have all this
it was a
written,
light
so-
nudge. It was a light nudge.
I'll try not to go off sidetracking about EM. Financial assistance, this one specifically section 2B, it's basically says always cover the gap. So when FEMA reimburses, they reimburse to 75% if it's a big disaster and 90% if it's a huge disaster. So there's always a gap that the town has to pay. And for 23, we covered that gap. This is talking about covering it always and forever, and that's a huge lift. 1, but 2, we have in place what's called ERAF, Emergency Relief and Assistance Funding. So basically, it says if you do this, which should reduce your damage during a flood, we'll give you a little bit more. And if you do this, we'll give you a little bit more. And if you do this, so it's a way to kind of put the onus on the town. Where if we just said every time you get destroyed, we're going to pay 100% of it, they would have no reason to build back better. They would have no reason to mitigate any issues. They would just build the building back and it would get washed away again and then get 100% back. So we want to recommend that we keep this ERAF system in place. Buyout programs, Doug talked a little bit about this. You know, we have the Flood Resilient Communities Fund, which is not in statute, but we've used it over the last several years to do a significant amount of buyouts, but also to give us some latitude where FEMA has a very specific buyout program. You shall be A, B, and C. So FEMA will buy you out if you're those, but sometimes there's D and E. So we started the Flood Resilient Communities Fund a couple of years ago to fill that gap. We've done a multitude of buyouts through it. Then last year, the legislation came up with a Community Disaster and Recovery Fund. Put about $2 million in it. That had $3 million has gone all to elevation projects in specific towns. So both of them are basically all the money's obligated out of them. So the root cause there is this, they're out of money. But the mechanism is there to do these things. And I agree with Doug. You don't necessarily want to be too specific. Both of them very clearly will do buyouts. You know, between Irene in 2023, we did 200 buyouts. And between 23 and 24, we did 200 buyouts. So in 1 year, we did as many as we've done before through these two funds. So the capacity is there. It's just the obligation, the money is not there. Homeowner Assistance Program, it's the same thing. Some of that funding is already available through DRDMF. Section 8 talks about 2 VEM positions, and to Doug's point that you know, the governor doesn't necessarily want to increase staffing. But if you do want to increase staffing, I would recommend that this grant liaison, as described here, is really a function of regional planning commissions because they're in the area with the town. So when the regional planning commission in Addison County goes to talk to the person in Bristol, they're talking about mitigation grants, but they're also talking about road grants and education. Like they have a multitude of things in their portfolio to talk about. Where if you brought a VEM person that was only going to talk about municipal grants, it's a very finite, very specific thing. So I would recommend that this become a position, if you decided to fund it, that they cover grants for the state. So VEM is about 90% grant funded. So we have a lot of work just to keep the grants coming in, to keep them coordinated. So if this person could coordinate that effort and make sure that Vermont is getting the grants that it needs. So then we can be the pass through, because we not only use a lot of grants, but we pass through a lot of grants. So that position might be better for that. And the flood technician is another very specific position that would be better incorporated into one of our mitigation individuals that already do that in some capacity. So our grants management people, they work through the buyouts and work with the towns to make sure that that's all working. Section 980-1, the monitoring devices for flooding. Again, we don't have the, I guess, the subject matter expertise to build these or to buy them. The towns can already go and install commercial monitoring devices. So we recommend that that's just removed and the town can take care of that. Weather alerts, like I said, VT Alert can already do that. So I recommend that being removed. 9B1, weather modeling, National Weather Service and NOAA both do that. I've already talked to NOAA 3 times today about the flooding on this weekend. So they're very deep in there. They have a seat in our emergency operations center, and they have the direct line to the Swiftwater program manager and myself, and they call this during multiple events. So us having an in-house prediction service wouldn't be effective or efficient. 9B2 is warnings. Again, talks about VT Alert is the system that can do that. And then section 11 is what we can't do, and I will leave that until we find out what's actually in.
Yeah, no, that's good. We crisscrossed on the draft there, so like apologies.
So sorry I took up a little bit of time there, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to.
No, it was all important because we're like kind of just understanding what you have forthcoming. What would be a redundancy in these various proposals.
Yeah, and I think you did mention the AAR for the 23 flood is forthcoming. It's almost done. And then the 24 flood is almost done too, but we've already incorporated most of the feedback into the new step update. But we do take an after action for everything, and we have an improvement plan tracker that tracks, make sure that we're tasking everything that we think should be an improvement and get it done. So that system is in place.
No, and we do that with this bill coming in the Wednesday before we wrote that it was going to be a very compressed timeline of moving with language. So we're going to get all these suggestions honed into a cleaner copy for us to digest.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time. Doug, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. On time. How is everybody?
How are you? Maybe in the morning. How
Just a Tuesday. So we're shifting gears now to take a look at the OPR bill. We have Deputy Secretary here and OPR Council. And you can find this copy on our committee page. And that is down on Tucker Anderson draft 2.4. And I asked the deputy secretary and her council to come in and just kind of run through this with us. So we understand the fresh words on the page.
I'm pulling it up as we speak.
Cool. Take the time.
I know, that was very.
Mine says, sorry, this cannot be reached at.
Yeah, I feel like the server might be like emails.
I laughed because our last witness said we talked to Noah today about the flood. And no one laughed, except me. To Noah.
To Noah,
Like Noah's all right.
flood.
He said he talked to Noah today about the flood.
Talked to Noah 3 times today about the
Isn't
flood.
that an official policy request to build arcs? We don't have money for arcs.
It's like I have money for like a rib.
Yeah.
There wasn't room for dinosaurs last time, so just make sure that.
Oh, if history repeats itself, I am so getting one. of
Bill,
them.
Bill, how do you abbreviate adjutant?
What?
How do you abbreviate the adjutant general?
AG?
AG, just AG?
Yep.
We're in all of them now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that time. For the record, Lauren Hibbert, Deputy Secretary of State.
And Jennifer Pullen, General Counsel for PR.
We are looking at draft 2.4 and Tucker, keep me honest here, on where the changes are. Because I hadn't looked at this new draft, prior to walking in the room. So, the first change that I'm seeing from what we talked about previously, I'm on page 6, page 7. Tucker, where is the first change? Is it in yellow on this copy? I'm sorry.
Underline.
So I didn't give you a highlighted copy because of some of the challenges with the highlighted copy last time. I believe that the first change from the last draft that the committee reviewed is the removal of the sections governing the use of the title social worker. So the first change is actually an absence from the draft.
And as I testified before the break, we do support not doing title protection for social workers. I'm happy to talk about the rationale again if this committee would desire, but we just do not have a way to enforce those protections, and we don't understand fully the impact of that prohibition. So if the committee were to include it, we would recommend hearing certainly from the hospital system at a minimum. Tucker, can I ask if there's any other changes?
There's
Is this
just
okay with
one.
you?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, please, yes, yes.
There's just one, and that is on page 11, right at the top of that page, the new section 13, which is an OPR report concerning the regulation of massage therapy establishments.
So, we are asking for this language, to be added, because we have been working with stakeholders on, ways to work on human trafficking. We do have a human trafficking problem in the state of Vermont, with OPR having jurisdiction over, touch professionals, including massage therapists. That is one space where human trafficking occurs. It's not the only space, but it is one space. And since we've had, we did a sunrise report on massage therapy, and found that this profession would be most appropriately regulated through registration, not certification or licensure. And we chose at that time to not pursue, registration of businesses. Well, now we have 2 years of experience of registration under our belt. We now have enforcement data. We are receiving complaints about human trafficking. Our team sees human trafficking occurring throughout the state. And we do think that, it's good to say you're wrong when you're wrong. And we were wrong. We should register massage establishments. We just were not ready to propose legislation this session. We want to look at it, make sure that we're setting it up the right way. But we fully anticipate that we will have that together for next legislative session. Yeah, so this language requires us to write a, Jen Cullen is pointing out to me, it's a written report concerning proposed legislation, just so this committee is aware. We will put it in report form, but it's probably just gonna be draft language to you.
Okay. Would you like us to amend this to reflect that?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, I don't want to hold it up here. We could do it on the Senate side if you want, but we will report, we shall submit to House Government Operations and Military Affairs and Senate Committee on Government Operations proposed legislation is what we would do.
Okay.
But it will be a report. We just wouldn't file it on the legislative reports page if that language was not there.
So yeah, you just essentially like using this as a vehicle to just provide us with the language.
Yeah.
To address.
It's a way to indicate to the public that we are going to work on this issue. We're committed to working on this issue. We don't actually need this language here. We are committed to doing it even if this language is not here. But it's important for the stakeholders to understand that we're taking action on this. So we do appreciate the language being added.
Representative Hoover.
So are you specifically talking about removing forward registrations of businesses for everybody in the field?
We
Is it a high
already-
turnover
We already do regulate all of the people in this field.
regularly?
Yeah,
License?
we register them, we oversee them, and we have full enforcement authority over them. And so we receive complaints. I think we've received upwards of, 25 or 30 massage complaints for a wide variety of topics, but many of them are about human trafficking.
What's the functional difference between registration and license?
Oh, do you want to explain that, Jen?
Sure.
Aside from probably, wow.
The money is not that different, but.
No, registration is a mandatory application that everybody practicing in the profession has to do, and it doesn't require qualification. So folks who are registered massage therapists, they don't have to show they went to massage school. They literally file an application with our office, they pay a fee, and they're registered. And then we have enforcement authority over them so that if they're engaging, for example, we've had numerous cases about sexual misconduct in massage. So if a massage therapist engages in sexual conduct with a client, we have enforcement authority over them. Licensure is also mandatory for everybody in the profession, but it requires qualification. So education, examination, that sort of thing. In massage right now, we don't require that.
And then there's this mid-level certification.
And certification is a voluntary application. So if you want to call yourself a certified dietitian, for example, you can choose to go through the certification process with OPR. You have to show that you're qualified, but it's not mandatory for everybody who's providing diet advice. Anybody can give you that advice, but if you want to stand out in the profession and call yourself state certified, then you choose to go through that process with OPR.
So if I might, Mr. Chair, we got a little broad there. Is all of that conversation also including massage therapists, or have you gone
We had that
field
conversation.
wise?
We had that conversation when we did the Sunrise report.
Mhm.
And we recommended to this body that this field be the form of registration, the least restrictive form of registration that would protect the public, which was our finding in that we needed to protect the public, but the least restrictive form was registration, the lowest level. And so that was passed 2 years ago, and we've been implementing that program, and we've learned things in that program. And as we've been implementing it, and one is that we think we would have more powerful tools in conjunction with law enforcement, both in-house and external, to help curtail the massage industry being exploited by human trafficking. And obviously the people who are in human traffic, they are really the exploited people.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And so, I mean, there are more stops even before this goes to the Senate. This will have to go to ways.
Yes.
And, yeah, so, discussing that section, you know, I'm open to having that conversation with those committees instead of those.
Okay, yeah, and as long as this committee's okay, if we take out those words, written report, at some point when it comes back over. If you
Duly
just,
noted, duly
if you just
noted.
defend, that would be lovely.
Well, I have council's hand up behind you.
Right now.
Yes,
Council, yes.
so based on your conversation, I just sent an updated draft 2.5 of the bill with the OPR request to remove the requirement for a written report and corrected a typo that the excellent and hardworking Autumn identified in that section. That committee was plural, so I've made those changes and sent an updated copy to the committee so that Autumn can post it and you can vote on draft 2.5 if you'd like to.
Thank you. Yes, Autumn, it is in. Please post.
Yeah, just got it.
Cool.
We have an update. Did you get it?
Yeah, she'll let us know when she posts.
Oh.
Send her email.
Takes her a second.
Boil water in here.
Okay, it's been posted, it might just be a minute, it will be a minute until it's. And you're gonna have to refresh your page.
Thank you, Autumn.
Okay, it's there.
Excellent. 2.5.
There it is.
And what was the typo?
Where was the typo?
There, it said Senate committees on government affairs.
Ah, pluralized. Nice snag.
Pluralism.
What was that? Never mind. Never. Snap. Snap. Hot mic. All right. And I'm just going to that language in there now. All right, section 13, revised language. Those words
Those
need
look
to
good.
do
We like
what we
those
need them
words.
to do.
Yes,
Beautiful.
thank you so much.
It's always a ride. So, all right. Any questions for Secretary of State's office? Well, we have them in front of us before we open it up to a committee discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everywhere there was social for Scotland.
Yes, all of those, all of that
Section was
language
cut.
we
Scotland.
have removed. And then the only other notable change was that section 13, where we just fine tune that language that was proposed earlier. Representative Waters Evans.
Are we discussing right now?
Yes, please.
I feel fine about this. I feel like I'm glad we clarified, and cemented some progress on the massage therapy and the practicing situation. And, everything else. The social worker section seems confusing and not quite necessary, so I think it's clean and good that it's not in there anymore, and, red roll, it's a good one.
Anyone else? DL?
Yeah, I still have a problem with and I understand the reasoning for them, but I can't see in the current climate, everything in the financials of, I don't believe we recommended the new position in our budget letter.
Correct. Yep.
And the added fees, it's just getting by another year or two without adding more fees to people or adding new fees. Is that actually necessary? Do we have to have the nickel and dime people?
So I understand where you're coming from. So once we got back into the conversations after the budget letter, there, at least for me, there was a deeper understanding where some of these were like disciplinary and punitive for people who were in the process of like adjudication or violations. That one other piece was a request of the result of two laws that this General Assembly had passed over the course of a couple of bienniums. So, yeah, so that's, if there's anything like specific that you would like to ask within those, feel free. We have the folks in the gallery who can answer those questions more granularly. But broadly speaking with these, like the other one with the subscription fee, that is a choice by an institution or a business to participate in that.
The peer support recovery fee increase.
Which one is that?
Page 4.
Under the biennial.
4,
Mm-hmm.
page 4, line 7, 8. V, the peer support providers, peer recovery support specialist. Going from $50 to $75 is it?
Yes, please. Yeah, no, let's make sure
The
everybody's clear
apprenticeship
understanding of all these
application
things before
fee.
we put forward a vote.
So, that fee, you may remember, that, you're a new member, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, so that legislation passed, not last year, but the year before. And when we were in that legislative process, the increase, to 75 got dropped in the legislative process. So, it was always the intent that the renewal would be $75 starting in 2027. And that language now reflects what was the legislative intent at the time. And we intentionally always set the application fee to be lower than the renewal fee because we want to make sure that the barrier to entry for someone who's new to the profession is as low as possible. But once you're working in the profession, we want to make sure that the renewal fee covers the work of our office, which we think $75, frankly, for peer support probably does not cover the work of the office, but we think it's appropriate given the work that they do and the population, that they come from.
Yeah, and on page 3, the apprenticeship application, the new $50 fee for an apprentice.
Yeah.
If somebody's trying to get into a profession and they're learning the skill,
So the important piece to remember about the apprenticeship path is it is something that an individual is choosing instead of going to school. So the apprenticeship path is a lot cheaper than going, and the apprenticeship path is really in certain professions. Classic one is barber and cosmetology. So instead of spending going to the Aveda Institute in Burlington, which I think is around $15,000 right now. Obviously, you can get student loans for that, but instead of going and doing that, you are working one-on-one with somebody and being trained in their shop. And it takes more time for our office to review those applications because we have to review the number of hours, what was covered, and read the supervisor's certification. So it's not as easy for our office as it is for the person who goes to the Aveda Institute, because the O'Brien's Aveda Institute, because we just get their, the transcript from them and the exam results, and it's just a different process for us. It's more complicated.
right? Oh, I remember the conversation. I'm still opposed to
That I
bringing up raising fees right now.
I can understand that, but if you want to know why we're asking, that is why.
No,
we're asking.
I remember the conversation. I wrote a lot of it down, actually,
Great, I'm
but
sorry.
I, no, it's,
I didn't
no.
mean to repeat myself. If
No,
that wasn't
no,
what you
it's,
needed.
it's perfectly fine for you to explain it again and people to hear it again. I was voicing my opinion on the fee increases, that's all.
Was there a hand up
Yes.
before conclusion? Yeah. Whoever's over here.
So this is not for debate, but I just wanted to express that I'm really appreciative of a lot of this bill, like 90% of this bill. But I, like Representative Coffin, can't go for the new fees or the increased fees. I'm on board with the more punitive ones, the data feed issue. I understand what Representative Byron, how he is justifying it, but for me, an organization like one that you've cited over and over again, UVM Medical Center, they can't do without this. It's like a must-have for them. So, to not know what we would be charging them because it's dependent on their usage at this time when healthcare is so fragile, when our healthcare systems are so fragile, I cannot vote to put that on them. So unfortunately, this was gonna be the first OPR bill that I would ever support, but I probably can't because of the money pieces. But thank you
I
for
have
all
to
the work
understand
you've
that,
done.
and thank you for
Yeah.
hearing us out and
Yeah.
hearing the reasons why we brought these proposals
Thank
to
you.
this table.
You definitely explained yourself really well and your position, and I really wish I could vote for it.
Well, I'm just gonna have to bring you a bill that you can vote for. Challenge accepted.
We have been working towards that. Thank you.
No, thank you, and I wasn't trying to be hard, it's,
No,
I know.
no, I understand. I
remember the
misunderstood what you
conversations,
want.
yeah. No, that's okay, I apologize.
Representative Ducey.
Lauren, are you saying like, back to the apprenticeship fee that, somebody who wants to get into a new profession, like for hairstyling, for example, their only option would be either pay $15,000 to go to the school, or it's 75,
It's $50
50 now
for the,
to learn with somebody and then actually not have to be in debt?
yes.
And
That is
and
correct.
Doing
And-
all the extra paperwork on your side.
And it is additional paperwork on our side, and we really are committed to providing apprenticeship paths. We got a federal grant in 2018, and we looked at all the professions that we have within OPR and tried to find apprenticeship pathways to as many as possible. And we've been building those into those professions as consistently as we can, including funeral directors. So we really have been really pushing the apprenticeship path as much as possible.
Mary Catherine, VL, then Hooper of Burlington.
Could you also speak to perhaps like, does the apprenticeship path also help with the rural nature of our state? Just because a lot of these schools, I'm guessing, would be in more urban centers compared to somebody who wants to study cosmetology and is in Island Pond?
Yes, absolutely. It helps with, when we do have an institution in state, you know, most of them are in the Burlington area. Cosmetology, the only one in the state is in the Burlington
The only
area.
one, wow.
That's the only school. And it's not a residential school, so it's one where someone would have to move to Burlington. But funeral is a great example because there is not a funeral program in the state of Vermont. There is no way to become a funeral director in the formal education pathway in the state of Vermont. You would have to move to Boston, which is one of the reasons why we created an apprenticeship pathway. You do have to do some education outside of the state, but the majority of the education in that pathway is with an established funeral director in our state.
We got a big round robin going on.
So-
BL, you're up next.
All right, on the apprenticeship application fee, $50. Without that fee there, is there still an apprenticeship
Yes.
pathway?
Yes.
Okay, so we
This-
don't,
this is-
that's what I was
This is
getting
a
at.
fee, this is a fee for work that we're currently doing for free. So what happened is we looked at what fees what are we currently doing that we don't charge any money for, understanding that our fund is running at a deficit. And we knew that there would not be an appetite for a fee bill for all of our professions, where we were realistic on that. That was our other option. We knew that was gonna be a no-go. So we looked at fees for things that are currently a choice of the person or a result of the person's actions, like the disciplinary fee. And saw that, again, this will not solve our deficit problem, but it's a step forward. And then we're studying our financials. We're doing that positive reporting study. And we're gonna have another report for this body in 2 years, where I think we will have recommendations on what we should do on an ongoing basis with the financial components of OPR, meaning should all of the fees be siloed? Should OPR be solely a special fund? There's a lot of options out there. They're big, and we weren't ready to do that this year.
Okay, so just for clarification that without that $50 fee, the apprenticeship could still happen
Yes,
for the $15,000 to a school.
correct.
So
If you-
they're
if
not
you-
losing an apprenticeship. is
No,
what I'm
this is
asking.
not a vote on us.
Okay,
We will not stop apprenticeships. This is something that is very good public policy. We're very committed to it. I personally have worked on this issue like countless hours. I love this policy. We just think that there should be some compensation for the work because it requires the establishment of a policy and rulemaking and forms and
Mhm.
review. It takes additional work for us.
Representative Hooper, then Representative Small.
I guess a comment and then a question. So we're balancing here fees, get the personnel cost in your office. So the money's gotta come from somewhere. If you're gonna have staff to do the stuff in a time like that.
Yes, I mean, it's not that we're going to terminate anyone on our staff, but it just means that
You're running slower. than-
we're running slower and also we're running without full compensation for the work that we're doing.
So my question is, because Kate asked if those two options were the only ones. Are we currently making barbers out of barbers that come in from military
We are,
outside this process?
yes,
Okay.
the military is an improved. Yeah, and that was part of the federal grant as well. Just so everyone knows, we looked at all of the military programs and one of the barbers was one and also medic to LPN and R was another, which is really important.
Representative Pistol.
So my question was, these career development centers that have high school students going through the barber and the cosmetology schools, they are.
That is an approved
That's an
cosmetology school.
Oh,
And
it is.
so if you are a high school student who's graduating from a PTE and you've done a cosmetology program, you're eligible for a license at OPM.
Place, it's not a apprenticeship.
That's
then.
correct.
Okay, that was my question.
Any other further discussion for the Deputy Secretary?
Run quick.
Well animated, well animated. All right, No, we've had a lot of conversation around a lot of, we're all of the components in this, the inclusion and exclusion of a couple of concepts as well. There's, I keep saying this week, there's more stops on the train as these things move. No, this is not the end of the conversation. It is just a stage of the conversation. So. Representative Waters Evans.
I would like to make a motion that we approve draft request 25-0244.2.4.
I second.
2.5.
2.5.
2.5, sorry. Is there another one?
That was the refresh that we just did with
Okay,
the
sorry.
Tucker's got everything. Tucker was on that.
Sorry.
2.5.
I apologize, Tucker.
Okay.
Just leave it for the night.
Would you like to reframe?
Yes,
Well,
I would like to make a motion to approve draft 3.2.5.
And do we still have a second for the?
yes.
All right. When the clerk is ready, please proceed. So.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Pincinel,
Yes.
Representative Morgan. Representative Hooper of Burlington,
Yes.
Representative Coffin,
No.
Representative Stone,
Yes.
Representative Hooper of Randolph,
Yes.
Representative Nugent,
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans,
Yes.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Hago.
No.
8-1.
Okay, and I will email drafting.
Yep.
The four and Representative Nugent will be the reporter of the bill. And thank you all. That was a blistering day that started earlier than usual for a Tuesday and ended later than a Tuesday. We got 4 bills out.